and good evening and welcome to NASWatch. Glad to know that you're here 7 p.m. every Friday to join us on issues that centers on activities at the National Assembly and of course everything from constituency projects to all that matters. Now, if you joined the show last week, you would recall that we started a conversation on the Reserved Seats for Women bill. My name is Cynthia Agbo. Now, it's going to be an extensive conversation. Unfortunately, last Friday, we were not able to talk about everything in total due to one or two constraints. But this particular episode will be giving you everything you need to know and, of course, having our guests join us on the show. Now, just to refresh your mind, that the Reserved Seats for Women bill in Nigeria aims to increase female representation in the country's legislative bodies. And of course, there are a couple of things that you need to know about the bill and the ongoing campaign. Now, the bill proposes to create additional seats in the National Assembly and state houses of assembly exclusively for women. Now, specifically, it seeks to reserve 37 Senate seats, 1 seat per state, and a federal capital territory. 74 House of Representatives seats, 2 seats per state, and the federal capital territory. And then to the State House of Assembly, 108 State House of Assembly seats, now 3 seats per. Let's now go back a bit to the National Assembly Open Week, where diverse conversations were held to the benefit of citizens. And one of such conversations was the Reserved Seats for Women's bill. Now, in solidarity, we had the plaque director, Clement Wankwo, who did speak about the involvement of the bill and the support that is encouraging every man to have for this bill. Let's hear from the plaque director.
The House of Representatives has also very strongly stated its commitment to the passage of the Special Seats Bill. And I'm delighted that the leader of the House, who is representing the Speaker here this morning, was part of a National Assembly delegation that recently went to Kenya to see how women are very well represented in their legislative process. And for all of us, it's important that this was the case, and I think it's so very helpful that the House of Representatives, the Speaker himself, the Speaker's wife, the Deputy Speaker, and the leadership of the National Assembly have very clearly stated their commitment to the passage of the Special Seats Bill. And anyone who has read the Special Seats Bill will clearly understand that it does not take to dilute, it doesn't seek to take any seat away from anybody. The 360 seats remain. What is being sought to be created in the Special Seats Bill is additional seats that will increase women representation, either by the fact that these new seats are added or by their ability to contest with men in the existing 360 seats. So no seat is being taken away from any man. It's really that, as the Minority Leader, Right Honorable Kingsley Chinda mentioned, it is, of course, very embarrassing to go to meetings internationally where Nigeria's votes are reduced simply because there are not enough women in those meetings, or Nigeria is actually disrespected because of the low level of women representation. And when the representative of the Minister of Women Affairs talked about equity in our democracy, it means really that we must make our democracy equitable. We must ensure that for all of us who are supporting the legislature, whether at the state or national level, that we do our best to ensure that the Special Seats Bill is taken very seriously. It is not a matter of faith or religion that you exclude women. I do not think that any religion excludes any particular gender from participation in governance. I do not think that you can find support in religion to carry out inequitable practices, which is where we are today is. And if we are to see more women represented, it would take the commitment of everyone who is in this room and everyone who is in the National Assembly to support this to happen. So on behalf of the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, I want to say that we are working very strongly with all of our partners, and I'm happy that the Minister of Women Affairs has shown very great support, very good lead on this subject. That's a very important direction for the Honorable Minister in terms of bringing in the executive, and I'm sure that our colleague here, Right Honorable Kafila Togbara, who is representing the First Lady, is also doing a lot of work with getting support from the First Lady and all of those who are in the executive. The 10th National Assembly, it will be the most important bill you have ever passed in this country. Say when the special seats bill passes. So please, this is really important for all of us, men and women, who are working with the National Assembly, that this passes. Thank you so very much.
To the plaque director, and he wasn't mistaken when he said it doesn't seek to misplace any number from the existing number. It seeks to create additional seats. Now, I do have some questions. I do have some concerns, but that will be when I introduce my guest. Now, let's now move forward, because this week there was also the committee for this particular conversation. Now, both chambers are on recess, but it's not a halt to committee activities, as this week, the cry for the passage of reserved seats for women's bill was intensified. Now, the bill, of course, which is HB 1349 in the House and Senate, and the Chairman House Committee on Women Affairs and Social Development and co-sponsor of the bill, and the Chairman of the Reserved Seats for Women Bill Committee, Mrs. Kafila Togbara, at a press briefing in Abuja, said that women's representation in governance and decision-making processes has been alarmingly low. Now, in that particular committee meeting, we had Senator Ireti Kingigbe as well. We also have Madam Atafwa, the UN representative, in this particular meeting, and they did speak a lot regarding to the reserved seats for women. Let's hear from them.
The importance of the bill. The reserved seat bill for women is not just about numbers. It is about giving women a voice in decision-making processes that affect their lives and communities. By increasing women's representation, we can ensure that their perspectives, their views, needs, rights are adequately addressed in policy formulation and implementation. This bill aligns with international commitments to gender equality, including the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Goal 5, which calls for achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. Studies have shown that when women are included in decision-making processes, economic growth is accelerated and benefiting to the entire nation as well. It will also interest you that we have sponsored 3 bills to increase the percentage of women in our security institutions recently, thereby promoting gender equality and inclusivity in our security institutions, all thanks to right.
The seats, we must have them. So I advocate and call on all the women of this country to please go out, speak to the men, speak to everybody you can speak to get their support for these 74 reserved seats. Then I would also like to point out to everybody else in the nation, you know, this isn't just about women, it's about the whole country. It's about the development of the country. It is shown everywhere that where there are more female representation, the countries are better developed economically. And we know that as the giant of Africa, we need to get ahead of everybody. I would also like to call, as my sister said, on all the governors, because we need their support in the state houses of assembly. This seat is about Nigeria.
Despite making up nearly half of Nigeria's population, women currently occupy fewer than 5% of seats in the National Assembly. This isn't just a gap, it is a call to action. A call to dismantle structural barriers, disrupt the status quo, and build a more inclusive and just governance system. So the reserved seats bill, in our opinion, is a transformative response to that call, a call to deal with dismantling structural barriers, disrupting the status quo. It affirms the principle that women belong at the table, not as guests, but as decision makers, not as exceptions, but as equals.
Now, you've definitely heard it there from the committee chairman and, of course, Senator Reti Kingigbe and Madam Atafwa. It is a bill that every woman, first you're in Nigeria, should be excited about. It's something that you should, keep talking about. The conversation of reserved seats for women isn't alien all over the world. And, of course, it's either in full effect in some countries or the conversation is on like we're having right now in Nigeria. And of course, last week we did start the conversation like I told you. And I just want to give you the dynamics of how it works in some other countries and in Africa as well. And also introduce my guest where we'll be dissecting this conversation, as I do have a lot of questions, for my guest this beautiful evening. Now, in some countries, they operate on the quota system. And of course, where they get to regulate the minimum number of women or candidates of an underrepresented sex to be included on the candidate list. And of course, reserve seats stipulates the number of women or representative of an underrepresented gender to be elected to the legislative bodies. And in different countries in Africa, we have that. Now, 36 countries and territories have adopted the system of reserve seats using three main methods for lower or upper houses or sub-national level councils. And so for special nationwide tie for female candidates only, this method takes a number of different forms. Let's start with Rwanda, for example. The election of a set number of women from districts designed for electing female parliamentarians only. These women are elected in 24 provinces through a specially designated electoral college. We also have a different method in Uganda. We have another different method in Mauritania, and in Morocco. We have these systems now, which elect 20 women through a women-only nationwide list. We also have rotational quotas. Now, this method ensures that this district will return only female candidates, and it's used at the subnational level in India by rotating reserve wards for one electoral cycle to another. So if you explore all the different countries, you will see that they have different ways. But when we come to Nigeria, I think that we are still yet to pass the bill before we begin to see which system we want to adopt. Well, I won't talk about everything. I'm going to get my guest, which I have been informed that she's standby right now. I do have Dr. Adora Onyechere Sidney Jack. She is joining me virtually to have this conversation. She's an international broadcast journalist and a gender advocate. This is one woman who has a lot of feathers to her cap. And so if you can hear me, good evening, Dr. Adora. It's so great to have you join me again this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
All right. I hope that we're going to have a great conversation today.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's dive straight into it. I don't know if you were following the show where we had the plaque director did talk about what the request is for this particular bill, which is about the fact that it doesn't seek to displace anyone among the existing 309 that is available in the House of Reps and the 109 that we have at the Senate, right? It seeks to create more seats. And I can't help but wonder, at a time where we are looking at the fact that we want to cut costs, we are saying governance is expensive. And here we are asking that we should create more seats, adding to the ones that we already have. Isn't that a bit of an ask, if I put it that way?
First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the program. Last week we did have a little bit of a network challenge, but I'm happy that we could actually reconnect today and start this conversation that has been, for some, a curious call, for some, a clarion call, and for some, an interesting adventure. But I can tell you that, I listened to what the CEO of PLAC did say, and I know that one thing is for sure. He talked about the importance. He talked about how essential this is. He also talked about how timely this is, and he also talked about a sunset clause within the conversation of why the bill exists and what it will be doing to help to, of course, ameliorate the issues concerning representation. Now, going back to what you said, I think that one of the things that we need to look at is, first of all, how do we consider the cost of leaving women out of the parliamentary space, especially when it is important to policy decision-making tables? What do you think would be the benefit of that? And what do you think would be the consequences of that? You are talking about a National Assembly that has just about 3.5% female membership, and you're talking about just 14 states, it's in the state assemblies. It's mind-boggling, because what we are talking about now, we're talking about an emergency bill that will seemingly help to disrupt the issue that are created by barriers that look around participation and inclusion. You talked about nominal representation. You talked about participation through quota. You talked about the different levels, of engagement. I remember that, sometime in 2011 or far back, I was engaged with looking at the conversation review on the Constitution Review Amendment through quota in Sri Lanka. And one of the things that were also mentioned was the cost. But then you leverage, pari passu between the cost of leaving women out and the cost of having women on board. Okay, so let me break it down to you. The estimated financial impact of adding women legislators to the National Assembly and 104 women in the State Assembly is minimal. And I will explain. Okay. On the national budget, between 0.072%, that is the lower limit, to 0.226%, which is the upper limit. That is, of course, talking about the Senate, of the 2024 national budget. That is what you're looking at adding into cost. On the National Assembly budget, between 0.78% lower limit to 3.49%, which is the upper limit of the 2024 National Assembly budget. The additional costs are based on existing salary structures, allowances, and operational expenses. Remember, you are not creating extra constituencies. And I think this is where people get it wrong. We are not creating extra constituencies for those women to come, run, and represent. For each senator that emerges under the additional seat for women only to run, that senator represents her state. For each House of Representative member for women only to run, as she emerges, that House of Rep member represents her state. Not that there is going to be a review to create new constituencies. That means that we have to go back to INEC to have that review within their constitution and bring it back to the National Assembly, and it will take a whole length of time. So we have said we will try this method to bring in more women through the additional seats, 16 years sunset clause, which is about 4 election cycles, and then a sit back to review, evaluate, and look at the outcome of the numbers that we have seen shove up within parliamentary representation. You are talking about community development and domestic politics.
Okay.
Politics is local. If you don't have women in state assemblies, how are you able to represent the policies that best defines their interest?
Dr. Daras, sorry. Before I let you go forward, you said something very significant. You said these women are not looking, it's not going to be among the 300 plus that is already existing. And we're not creating more constituencies. I think this is the part where you have to slow down to really explain this part. Because now, I'm sure somebody who is watching is wondering, okay, fine, we're not creating more constituencies. We still have the number of seats already existing. So what are these women going to be if they have to contest? Under what are they contesting? Are they going to be handpicked? Are they going to be appointed? What is the structure going to look like?
Okay. Well, let me explain. The reserved seats bill for women, 6 additional seats for women to run amongst women only. Now, you are looking at 1 seat for Senate
in each state for women only to run, including the FCT. You are also looking at 1 seat for women only to run in each state for House of Representatives, including the FCT. Now, for the State Assembly, we are looking at 3 seats for women only to run in each state across the 36 states.
Okay.
So what this means is that all of these seats and all of these elections will happen in their primary stage across all the political parties who want to field women.
Okay.
So the reserve seats bill is looking at if there are 19 political parties and the bill is passed, the 19 political parties would have women who will come out to run on their party platforms to represent the reserve seats.
Okay.
Now, you have 19 women from Lagos State in 19 political parties, and they all get primaries and then go through primaries and get a ticket to run for the reserve seat. So those women will run on their party ballots to represent Lagos, but only one woman will emerge from one political party.
Okay.
And so the significance is that a woman will most definitely emerge, regardless of all the odds. And so it means that it is just for women alone to run amongst women for that particular seat for a period of 16 years. And then after that, we will now be able to review and then evaluate whether the currency in numbers have also trickled down to not just the center, but also at the state assembly.
Okay.
So in total, we're looking at 37 seats for House of Rep, 37 for Senate, and then you're looking at 108 seats for the state assembly, a total of 182 seats in number.
Okay. For those who would like to join the conversation, probably you have questions, you have something to say, you can look at the screen. You will see the WhatsApp number on the screen, just in case you want to join the conversation and, of course, ask 1 or 2 questions. You can also send your questions or comments to the WhatsApp number as well. Now, I do have a question, Dr. Adora, which is the aspects of... It's a beautiful idea. You've broken it down. I'm sure even the man sitting down in his parlor watching right now can understand what you just said. But let's look at another side to this. Why is this bill not looking at a process where male and female could compete together? I mean, this system works in some other countries in Africa, around the world as well, where male and female seek to compete together in the existing number of seats available. And may the best man win. Why are we not looking at that direction?
One, because of the issues of institutional and systemic patriarchy. Now, Nigeria has the largest population of women who are registered as voters, and that's a currency that is huge. But then we want to also look at how that number can migrate from just being on the voters list to being able to come onto the ballot to be voted for. And we can only do that if we have the enabling structure and the enabling ecosystem for women to thrive. You mentioned other countries earlier on. You talked about Rwanda, countries like Cuba have about 55.7%. But, it is a highly, masculinized system, but also looked at reflections to be able to have quotering system, to be able to have women, process participation through that system. Why? Because of increased violence against women in elections, because of aggression, because of stereotyping, because of stigma, and also because of election financing. Now, we are talking about systemic defaults here. We're not just talking about, having political, rhetorics that edify the fact that democracy thrives by this. We're talking about a democracy that is skewed in the sense that when you're thinking about nation, when you're thinking about here is about fairness. That's what I hear as a citizen. I hear justice. I hear inclusion. National means you and I. It means citizens' participation on equal grounds. But that is not what this is. So what we are saying is that if you look at the other countries, for instance, Rwanda had to look at quotering to be able to show up the numbers of women in parliament for a country that came post-genocide. You look at Kenya today, where you have the number and increased numbers of persons with disability, especially women, and women in parliament post their elections in 2023. You look at a country like Ghana. You look at a country.
Dr. Adora, are you there? Okay, so we're just going to hope that she joins us back because we still have a couple of... Okay. All right, go ahead.
So there has to be a deliberate effort. That's what I'm trying to say. Because without a deliberate effort, the women may all be able to purchase party nominations, but eventually don't make it through the primaries because of the skewed political arena within the political parties. But when we have legislation, we are able to look at mandatorily reviewing party constitution that looks at quota system through activating legislation for women to participate. It now means that those numbers are now numbers that political parties will adhere to, whether or not they are not adhering to their quotering system within their constitution. And so that is the leverage women get. And then secondly, remember that beyond political parties,
I wonder. The Nigeria has to do us this way because we really need to have this conversation today. And I do understand that we have some comments or questions coming in for our guests regarding to this conversation, talking about reserved seats for women's bill. This is a much talked about bill. And of course, I'm aware that in about 2 days' time, we're also going to be sitting down to talk about this very bill again right here in Abuja. And it's a great conversation. It's a very great conversation. I just hope that Dr. Adora will be able to join us back again. But we'll just go on a very, very short break. When I come back, we'll read out some messages and we'll try to connect back with our guest. You. Chief Don is from Benin is asking why seats needs to be reserved for women in democracy. I mean, where we are talking about what a man can do, a woman can do better.
It says impact and possibility.
Yes.
And I think this speaks to the core of possibility. I'm not just saying this for rhetoric speaking. I ran elections in the 2019 elections to represent my constituency, Okigwe constituency. And I know that even though I ran under a smaller party, the challenges and the barriers that faced me, first of all, I was the youngest, and then secondly, I was the only female that had dared from my constituency.
Yeah.
And I was up against over 36 men. And from the conversation was, first of all, why should a woman even lead us? And coming from the Southeast, I had the conversation around tradition, around culture, and around patriarchy that showed up in its ugliest form, that you will not believe that even within immediate family spaces, you would find dissenting voices who would say it has never been done before, a woman shouldn't go now. So you are not up against refusal from the prospects of the Constitution or the ethics of democracy. You are up against roots, systemic division and diversionary tactics that have been imprinted through religion and through tradition. The only way those ecosystems and those, conversations around those kinds of environments and community settings is that if women are enabled to actually be on the table, then the change, the recommendation to review will start from within. It will start from when the women are seated on the table. But if we don't have women seated on those tables, you will still have the system build itself up. I mean, we're talking about just 4 women, 3.5% representation at the National Assembly. We're talking about that now. Trust me, by the time we do not have a measure that seeks to break the barriers that culture permits, that tradition permits, that religion permits, that money disqualifies, we will have no woman voice. We would have less women
in representative capacity, because women will be resigned that politics is no longer for women in Nigeria. But what we are trying to do is to look at a system that looks at possibilities, not just because women want to run, but because we want to look at national development from a place of inclusion. We want young girls to be able to see role models of women in power and in leadership because it was made possible. And I can tell you, and I speak to the person who, asked me the question. Fantastic question, because it's been asked so many times. But we're not dealing with a fine line here. We're dealing with diversionary conversations that have been imprinted by patriarchy, and it is nobody's fault. So what we are saying is that the system in itself cannot correct itself overnight. And that's why this is a sunset clause, to be able to review, get women in the room and help participate at the level where inclusion is not just by permission. Remember, they are contesting elections. They're not going to be nominated. Yes. They are not appointed. They are going to go through primaries. They are going to have delegates. They are going to emerge. They are going to go to the ballot. They are going to be voted for.
Dr. Dara, what are the guarantee, right? What are the guarantee that I'm not saying this is not going to be achieved, because we all know the process. Thankfully, this has scaled through second reading, right? What are the guarantee that this bill that we're all fighting for gets approval, gets to its final stage, moves on and becomes law? What are the guarantees that it would achieve that which you and the team and every other person is fighting for? Now, there is this thing, there is this popular, I don't want to call it saying, right, in this part of the world, in Nigeria, that women don't support themselves. So what are the guarantees that when we finally get to achieve these, women will begin to support themselves? The last time we had a woman come out for president, she had 1 vote. And one of the questions I asked myself was, does it mean that nobody in her family could even vote for her? Does it mean that her friends couldn't vote for her? Does it mean that her church members, somebody couldn't vote for her? Probably that 1 vote was just herself. You're talking about systemic problems. Why can't we look at addressing the systemic problem instead of asking for extra seats first? Because this systemic problem will still be there when we achieve the seats. So at that point, aren't we going to be dealing with...
Okay. I would like to see this differently. And when I say systemic, when you talk about reserve seats is not just a policy document that looks to have more women in the room. It is a seat for all of us. It is a seat where, if it is achieved, the women are not going to be voted by constituency. It's even a tougher election, because you are going to be voted by the whole state. You're not going to be voted by your constituency. So imagine double the campaign, double the intensity. And, it may look like luxury to a lot of people, but it is not. And then secondly, when we talk about systemic issues, we're talking about systemic issues like issues considered along the borderlines of tradition, culture, religion, patriarchy, even within the family. And that is why when you're talking about other countries like Kenya, like Ghana, like Gambia, like even Namibia. In Namibia, we have for the first time a woman president, a woman vice president, and a woman speaker.
Yeah.
Okay? Across board. And so nobody talks about how deformate that is for the male ecosystem. Nobody is saying, the men are left out. What they are asking is, are these women going to bring results? Is the president and her vice and the speaker, are they going to create an enabling environment where all citizens feel like citizens? And where inclusion is about national development? That is exactly what we are saying. In the question that you're talking about women supporting each other, I also think that this is such a sexist question that has been asked predominantly. It encourages patriarchy, it encourages stereotypes. And even though it does exist, it also exists with the men. The men fight, the men have issues within the political parties, the men argue, so will the women. You must find a harboring ground. You must find the harbinger. You must find the gaps where the strengths multiply and diminish the negative, where the discordant tunes are not amplified, but the strengths and the capacity of the vision of the total whole. And I think that we are going with this for the first time in a long time. And I'm sure you said this earlier. We have such a movement around the reserved seats bill for women that we have not seen in a long time, except we saw the Not Too Young to Run bill. That was when we saw this kind of movement. For the first time, we're seeing stakeholders, we're seeing women organizations, we're seeing politicians, we're seeing national development partners, we're seeing local NGOs, everybody coming on the table. The public hearing was the conversation for the masses, for the people. You're asking what is the possibility of this bill and how will it be passed? We have gone through first and second reading. We have also gone through our public hearing.
Yeah.
The public hearing is for the people across the zones to come forward and present their memorandum and presentations in support of whatever bill that they want. I can tell you that the two priority bills that took front stage across the zone was state creation and the reserve seats bill for women. And we saw that people, for the first time, were asking questions on how do I get involved? What does this mean for my daughter? What does it mean for me? And all you will hear is, I think it is time for us to try differently. Because whether you like it or not, the politics of depending on nomination, the politics of appointing positions, can the 10th Parliament and even the President during his combined session on Democracy Day said, I am looking forward for this bill to pass. And I'm hopeful that this bill will be passed and brought forward come December 2025. So for the presidential and executive backing, we are hopeful that it is not just political rhetoric on the part of the executive, that they will make it talk. And that for the 10th Parliament, that as they go on recess and come back, that the conversation on looking at this bill as they have reviewed them across the public hearing, they would see the urgency of time. They will see the necessity and the emergency that this bill presents. I do understand the intrigues, but let me tell you, if we do not pass this bill in this 10th Parliament, remember, it is not going to take shape in the 10th Parliament, it's going to take shape and take life in the 11th Parliament. But it is up to the 10th Parliament to put itself in the history of time and say to the next generation of girls, your life too matters. Your voice is absolutely important, and we do deserve a country where there is the voice of the man on the table, especially with decision and policy making, and that of the woman.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adora. It's been great having this conversation with you. At this point, due to time, I wish we could go on and on, but due to time, we might not be able to, go on and on in the questions. But I'm definitely sure that I will see you on the 4th, where we'll keep talking about the reserved seats for women. And when there are more updates, trust us to bring it right here on NASWatch. Thank you so much, Dr. Adora. Do have yourself a great evening.
Thank you.
All right, and that is where we draw the curtain for NASWatch this beautiful evening. It has been a great conversation talking about the reserved seats for women. When she was speaking, she talked about constitutional states creation, and it would actually form a part of our conversation for next Friday, so you don't want to miss that particular conversation on NASWatch. My name is Cynthia Agbo. Do not forget, you can follow us on our social media platform. Drop your questions, drop your observations, everything you want to talk about around your environment, your constituency, your representative. You want to say something about them, you can reach us on our WhatsApp number, and I will definitely take those questions when I come on Friday on NASWatch. Do you have yourself a pleasant evening ahead? At 8 o'clock, it will be time for the news. Don't go anywhere.